foliar sprays or foliar spray. I think some people pronounce it foliar, some people pronounce it foliar. Either way, tomatoes, spraying with the lights on versus lights off. Now, some people say there's harm in spraying with the lights on. Other people say it's going to be fine. What's your take on that?
It depends on what it is you're applying to the plants, and it depends on the nature of the chelate itself. I will say it's worth paying attention to what happens in a tropical rainforest, where the sun is always out and it tends to rain quite a bit. And it seems like tropical rainforests are pretty diverse in terms of the total number of plant species. So these are very, very biodiverse regions. There's a huge number of plants that are growing, and they've kind of evolved these mechanisms to deal with, the sun and rain being present at the same time. There's no real magnifying effect. I've heard people say something like that, where water droplets can kind of magnify the energy of the sun. I don't really think that's the case, to be perfectly honest. I do think that there's some cause for concern if you're dealing with, compounds that are insoluble that are present inside of the water that you're applying, like carbonates, for example. If you've got well water that's very high TDS and it's not treated and it's not filtered, doing foliar sprays of that could result in some kind of damage, because what ends up happening is, as the outer layer of the leaf dries, the minerals that are present inside of that water end up not being absorbed properly by the plant, and they tend to hang out on the outer layers of the leaf. So as the water evaporates and the leaf surface dries off, there progressively begins to be a little bit of salt formation that happens. And it's really that salt formation that can, create some problems for the plants. If you have organic acids, if you've got amino acids, or if you've got some chelated forms of nutrients, those typically get absorbed pretty rapidly through the leaf surfaces, and doing foliar sprays with the lights on is, generally speaking, not an issue. Obviously, it makes sense, to test on a small number of plants first, and maybe turn the lights down a little bit, maybe at 50% if you've got the ability to adjust the light intensity. But if you've never done something like that before, or if you're curious to see if the nutrients that you have are available through the leaf surfaces, that's a good practice. Pick a small number of plants, turn the lights down a little bit, spray the plants during the middle of the day, and see what happens. And then from there, work your way up to gradually becoming more and more comfortable feeding your plants with the lights on, doing foliar sprays. I think in a lot of ways, it can actually be highly beneficial, because water itself has a very high heat capacity. It can absorb a lot of heat. And this is important on days where it's very, very hot. In fact, I remember a couple of years ago here in Washington, it was very hot. Maybe 2 or 3 years ago in August, it was something like 110 degrees. And we typically don't get that hot here in the Pacific Northwest. I mean, for us, a really hot day is like 85 to 90 degrees. So for us to be sitting at 110 was like freakishly hot. And I remember going outside. I was growing some zucchini and cucumbers at the time. And I remember going outside, and I foliar sprayed my plants with a calcium chelate. It was 110 degrees outside. It was 1 p.m., smack dab in the middle of the day, in the middle of August, and the sun was directly overhead. I mean, they could not have gotten any more intense. But because the chelate that I was spraying was 100% available for the plants to take up, it didn't burn them at all. And I used a pretty hefty dose. I used a dose that was somewhere between 80 to 100 milliliters per gallon, which is astronomical. I mean, I would typically, for this calcium chelate, I would recommend people use it at the rate of maybe 10 to 20 milliliters per gallon. And I ended up using it at 80 to 100 milliliters per gallon, which is crazy high concentration. So if there was any kind of phytotoxicity associated with that compound itself, it would have manifested itself within a matter of minutes, because the leaf surface dried out within 10 minutes, but the plants actually looked a little bit more perky. They looked a little bit more uppity. And I attribute part of that effect that I saw to the fact that I sprayed water on the leaf surface. So all of that heat, the leaf surface temperature, it was just baking in the sun. It was getting scorched, and it wasn't doing too well. Of course, I come and give it a cool spray of water. That water soaks up that heat just like a sponge, and the leaf surface cooled down dramatically. Now, instead of the engine overheating within plants, now we've brought that engine back to its operational temperature range. Now it's just kind of cruising along through the rest of the day. So I would say there's some real benefits associated with the timing of application being the middle of the day. If you have those types of stressors where it's very hot and the light intensity is very high, and you have a good fully chelated product that's not going to cause phytotoxicity issues.
This clip is brought to you by Happy Hydro. For all your garden equipment needs, visit happyhydro.com, link is in the video description, and use the discount code MrGrowIt.